Hi guys, in this video we are going to discuss the problem 3 numbers from Codechef starter 77. So this is the second problem for div 1 and this technically should be the third problem for div 2. So cool, let's get started with the problem. So the problem states that chef has 3 numbers A, B and C. He can do the following type of operations. So he can select 2 numbers amongst A, B and C. He can add one to the selected 2 numbers. So let's say we selected A and C. So he would be adding one to A and adding one to C, and the remaining number that over here would be B, he would subtract 1 from the remaining number. So what I want to do is that after performing some number of operations, he wants that all the three elements should be equal. So if it's possible, then we have to return the minimum number of elements. If it's not possible, then we have to return -1. So pretty straightforward and simple question. The constraints over here are that all the three numbers can be up to 10 to the power 9. That's basic. Cool. So yeah, that's what they've given in the question. So let's get started with the solution. So what I'm doing over here is that I'm firstly storing the values into a vector. Now one could call me stupid that why I'm doing this and why not just store it in A, B and C, because I wanted to sort it, and I would have to write if else statements, but actually sorting becomes easy if I'm already having the elements in terms of an array. So that's the only reason I took an array or a vector over here. So firstly I take the 3 elements, then I sort it. So let's say the elements were A, B and C. So after sorting, the condition that now becomes is that A is less than equal to B and B is less than equal to C. Cool. So this condition is now satisfied. So now since this condition is now satisfied, and I also want that all the 3 elements should be equal, that also states that B is equal to C, or over here like I can say that V1 is equal to V2, right? So if, because of that, in a single operation, I'm selecting 2 elements and I'm decreasing 1, right? So I can say that by by some amount, I want to increase my element V1 or my element B, and by some amount, I want to decrease my element C, so that they meet in the middle and they become equal. So in order to do that, what I can say is that by what amount do I want to increase B and decrease C? So that would be whatever difference is there between the 2 elements divided by 2. Cool. That's basic stuff. So that's what I'll be doing over here. So I'll be incrementing, or let's say I'll be decrementing C by the step, and I'll be incrementing A and B, or the element at the index 0 and 1, by these number of steps. Cool. Cool. After that, what I'll do is that if after performing these operations, if I'm able to reach to a scenario where the element B and C are equal, only in that case there's a possibility of getting the answer. If even after all of this trouble, or even after performing this operation, if my B and C are not equal, then I'll not be able to get to this particular scenario. Now let me discuss this a bit, although it's pretty trivial, but let's just discuss it a bit. Cool. So they were the elements for A, B and C. Now what would happen is that if after performing the elements B is not equal to C, then that basically means that let's just provide some values as to get to this thing. So let's say the values were 3 and 6. Let's call it 1. Cool. So A is not of no use right now. I'm just concerned about B and C. So over here the difference was 3, right? So the way I incremented was by that I would have incremented B by 3 by 2. So that's 1 actually, right? So I would say that my B is now 4 and my C is now 6, or C is now 5, right? So B is basically 3 plus 1 and C now is basically 6 minus 1. Cool. Now is it possible for me, for any value of A, I'm not even concerned about A, is it possible for me to make B and C equal? It's actually not possible. Now why is that the case? Because in every operation I'll either be incrementing an element or I'll be decrementing an element, right? So I have 3 elements, and in each operation I have to either increment something or decrement something from each, or I have to increment each of the or the selected element by 1, or I have to decrement it by 1. Now let's try to do some operation. Let's say this is B, and let's say this is B and this is C. Now let's say I increment B by 1 and I increment C by 1. In that case the difference actually remains 0, so that doesn't help. Let's say I increment it by 1 and decrement it by 1. In that case the difference would actually become 2. If I decrement it by 1 and decrement it by 1, the difference would actually still remain 2, right? Oh sorry, plus 1 over here. So if the difference between B and C is 1, there's no way of doing it, right? I hope that now makes sense. So if after performing these operations, or the operations after performing these operations, if uh, the elements at B and C, or the elements at the index 1 and 2 are still not equal, then it basically means they differ by 1 itself. You can try dry running it a bit if you are if you really want to know that why would they differ by 1 itself. But yeah, it's obvious that they differ by 1 if after performing these many operations, if they're not still equal. If that's the case, I'll have to print -1. Cool. Now if they're equal, so I'll have so there could be a scenario that now my element, so now I'm saying that my element B and C are equal, but A might or might not be equal to C, right? Or A might not be might or might not be equal to B, but I have to make A equal to C, right? So how can I do that? So what I can say is that I'll definitely have to increment my A, right? But I can't just increment my A. I have to increment one of the elements from this, and I have to decrement one of the elements from this itself, right? So now when I'm incrementing A by one step, I'll firstly increment B by one step, and I'll decrement C by one. In the second step, when I'll increment my A further, so I'll do it A plus 1 plus 1 now, and I'll decrement my B now. So A, in the previous step, B was becoming B plus 1, and I'll decrement my B, and now I'll increment my C. So technically, after even number of steps, right, my A would become A plus 2x, my B would become B plus x minus x, and my C would become C plus x minus x. So it would become A plus 2x, B and C, right? X and x would actually cancel out. So from this, what I say is that if the number of operations, or the difference between, over here I said that, let's say y is the, okay, let me write it a bit. So I was having A, B and C, and B was already equal to C, right? Now let's say difference between A and C is equal to y. Cool. So if y is even, then I can say that y is equal to 2x. If it's even, I can write it in this form. Then this kind of operation is possible, where I can add 2x to A, and B and C could still have the same values. If my y is odd, then this kind of operation would not be possible, or I can say that I can make A plus y, but then it would have been B plus 1 or C, or it would have been A plus y and B plus or C plus 1, right? So this is not something I want. So if the difference between A and C is even, in that case, I would say that the answer can exist. I would print the minimum number of steps. If if the difference is actually odd, in that case, I'll print -1, because the answer cannot exist. So that's exactly what I'm doing over here. I'm calculating the number of steps. The number of steps is simply the difference between A and C, or the element at the second location minus the element at the third, at the 0th location. So that's the step I need. Now, if these steps are odd, or the difference is odd, in that case, I can say that the answer does not exist, or I can print -1. However, if the number of steps required are even, in that case, the answer would exist. And what would be the answer? So the answer would be whatever I calculated previously. So this is what I calculated previously. Give me a second. Let's just make it a bit better. Let's just remove this. And let's just say, sometimes my solution is a bit clumsy. The only reason is that I just code it up in the contest, right? And I don't do proper indentation, or sometimes don't give proper names, or the right way of doing things, right? So it's the whatever comes to my mind first, I do that. So yeah, I can say step plus equal to step 1 plus okay, and over here you can simply print out step. Cool. So initially I had already put the number of steps in the variable called step. I'll increment the variable by the number of steps required at this particular time. And now if the difference was actually odd, in that case I'll print -1, else I'll print the number of steps. Cool. Yeah, that's it for the video, or for this solution. If there's something you still didn't understand, let me know. More than happy to help you out. Cool guys, thanks for watching this video. Bye bye.